Module 4, looking at the Walsh book, Risk and Resilience After Divorce. Also incorporating into this module will be the McMaster system. So I want to talk to you guys for one thing, real quick thing. You have to have your topic for your final paper submitted this week. It doesn't really matter as long as the Marriage and Family Systems topic, but please send it in and get an approval for it. So looking at this, divorce, single parent households, as we talked earlier, is common and it's growing and it has become the norm. 1 million divorce decrees granted as of 1998. That's only gone up since we've hit the millennium. Rate of divorce tripled over the past 50 years, 3 times more divorces than they were in the late 60s, early 70s. We talked about the divorce statistics, 1 and 2, first divorces, and it going up significantly from there. Many of the reasons have to do with the stresses that contemporary families deal with, blended families, step families, families that are cohabitating without maybe some of the finality or formality of an actual marriage. Other families disagree that that's not even necessary, doesn't even impact it. So it has to do with expectations that each partner brings to the relationship. Half of the families ending in divorce have children. So of those 50% of divorces, a quarter of those are affecting minor children. Respective remarriage rates vary by gender. 65% of women remarry, 75% of men remarry. If you look at kind of a marriage and family axiom, that women grieve, men replace, men tend to remarry. It's not really the stereotype that men are not looking to get married. Most men are actually definitely looking to remarry. So just kind of looking over these trends. Half of cohabitating marriages are short-lived, ending in 1 year. Somewhere around 75% of divorced families tend to not remarry right away, but to cohabitate first. That cuts in half the time a child spends in an actual single-parent home. 20% of children also go through a divorce the second time around with their parents' second divorce. Many children encounter multiple family units growing up in the 18 years that they are living as minor children in a home. Looking for risk factors. Rising divorce rates, increasing cohabitation, decreases in rates of remarriage for culturally diverse groups, non-Hispanic whites, African Americans, Hispanic whites. African American women are staying single longer, less likely to marry. Looking at risk for divorce in a first marriage, 25% higher if their own parents divorced. And the statistics may be somewhat lost on us, but if we start looking at actual family groups that have been involved in this, it makes it a little bit more necessary for us to incorporate marriage counseling, couples counseling, divorce recovery. Whether you're reuniting with a partner that you're having problems with, or you're going on, how to still parent effectively the children that you have. So, negative affects, disengagement, stonewalling, contempt, denial, blaming, the 4 horses of the apocalypse identified by Gottman leads to a 98% likelihood of divorce. Sexual dissatisfaction, financial instability, adjustment disorders, personality disorders, relationship disorders, domestic violence. All of those things impact how well we are able to maintain marriages. The most commonly accepted theoretical model of divorce is a process perspective. Get the partners in, hear them as a couple, hear them as individuals, bring them back, try to bring the families in, try to have the children have a voice in this situation, advocate for those family members who can't speak up for themselves, how to help assist with marital transitions and family reorganizations. A lot of that depends on how successful you are at keeping the families in counseling. And as you know, it's not that we can keep them, it's whether we can engage them and they can decide that they wish to stay. Effects of divorce. Adult adjustment. Adults who are going through divorce have financial problems, inadequate levels of income. They have anxiety, they have eating and sleep disorders, they have work stressors. They have occupational problems, they have substance problems, they're drinking sometimes at home, sometimes out, partying more, anger issues, depression issues, lowered self-esteem, self-worth. It's hard to lose someone that you thought you were going to be married to the rest of your life, the other part of you, the other person that's in your couplehood. Not every family experiences, not every individual. Loneliness can be huge. Not every post-divorce change is always negative. There's some relationships that are so toxic that sometimes the primary emotion experience is relief. There's actually a de-stressing. Married men, married women have better health issues. They have better longevity. They have a happier quality of life. They're less likely for the suicide than divorced, unless those individuals are in such toxic, unhappy, conflicted relationships that stress is impacting them even more. Custodial parents. Parents who can work out a happy relationship with the other parent where the child is as stressed as least as possible. The rules are fairly consistent. The new step parents on either side are invested in having the child. Works out much better for the overall health and emotional adjustment of the child. When you're looking at child adjustment, there's serious risk of maladaptation. Where does that come out? It comes out of school. It comes out in the behavior. It comes out with friends. It comes out, depending on the age of the child, with fighting, with inattention, with slipping grades, with no friends, with crying, with temper tantrums, spiraling up to drinking, inappropriate peers, cutting, eating disorders. Many children have no serious difficulties after their parents' divorce, provided that the parent has not been taken from them. Some of them coming from toxic families are better adjusted after the divorce. Some of their lives are enhanced after the divorce if the parents can come together effectively. Sometimes the negative effects resolve quickly, but there is another population demographic where children are adversely affected by divorce, even into adulthood, even into their adult relationships, even into the parenting of their own children. And those things put these families at overall risk. If you're looking at risk factors, page 103, 20 to 25% children in divorced families have high levels of behavioral problems than non-divorced families. Health problems, relationship problems, peer problems, academic problems than the non-divorced people. Looking at that kind of adjustment, particularly if those families can come in and get some quality marriage and family therapy, the adjustment resolves itself over time and families can center back to homeostasis and find balance again. Long-term effects that persist with divorce disruption in normal developmental trajectories during the period of adolescence may be when a father or mother are completely removed from the child's life, when the other parent has been incarcerated or has been deemed unfit by the court or has decided to go on with a new family in a new remarriage, or the relationships between the parents are so severe that they're not able to put those differences aside and work together so the child can still see their parent. Looking at another divorce for children that are products of divorce at age 7, They demonstrate almost a 40% increase in clinical levels of psychological problems even into adulthood. Looking at diversity, looking at the cultural, contextual, environmental factors and how that affects. Be aware of those things. Be ready to discuss those things with the families who come in to see you. Looking at effects of divorce on family relationships. What happens with the new husband, the new wife, the new partner? What happens to the grandparents that were, or the aunts and uncles that no longer are part of the new family system? Having an understanding that those relationships belong to the child and that you don't divorce, you can divorce your partner without necessarily divorcing the other parent of your child or the families of the other parent, and trying to maintain those ties. Looking at relationships between custodial parents and children, not using children as pawns to get back or hurt the other person, or not wanting them to go over because there's anger of a previous affair and that new person that was part of the affair is now living in the home. Trying to avoid psychological distress, anxiety, depression, anger, loneliness, panic, despair, sadness. Trying to characterize warm, close, compassionate relationships within the family. Custodial mothers and fathers demonstrate similarities in deterioration and recovering and competent parenting. The sad thing is that while the couple relationship is deteriorating, the parenting subsystem with the children can also deteriorate. Custodial fathers report less child-rearing stress than mothers, tend to have fewer discipline problems, fewer control problems than mothers report. Sometimes opposite gender. A mother with a son, a father with a daughter experience less stress than same gender. Mothers and daughters, fathers and sons tend to sometimes have more problems. Looking at relationships between non-custodial parents and children. Parents, typically fathers who see their child 4 days a month. Again, it goes back to the argument about quality over quantity. Even if that's what the court allows, finding better ways, date night between the weeks, some longer extended time, some shared custody, some weeks where the father takes the child to school and picks them up. Something that more closely approximate normal family relationships than just a simple court document. A central goal of legal policies is joint custodian and mediation. Parents are going to have to expect, and you're going to have to expect for the parents to come in through your practice to help them through the mediation process, because this is a dynamic that's in place in the court systems. Again, safety has to be a concern. If the parent who is non-custodial has substance abuse issues, domestic violence issues, personality disorders that endanger the child, if there's been criminality involved, these kinds of efforts no longer are on the table. And other kinds of systems have to be put in place to provide for the child's safety. Safety first, but if safety's not an issue, everything else should be on the table to work out between the families. Looking at relationships between siblings. Sometimes one child is better adjusted, another child is less well adjusted, or one child is closer to one parent and the other child is not as close. Trying to avoid those sibling issues where they're fighting among themselves and not being able to maintain a healthy sibling bond is important. The spillover effect can come when they're being forced to be siblings with children who are not related to them but have come in through blended and step families. Sometimes those relationships work really well, sometimes they work very poorly. But acknowledging it and bringing it forward to be dealt with and discussed. Again, as many family members from either partner, the aunts, the uncles, nieces, cousins, nephews, grandparents, particularly grandparents, that can be still involved in the child's life despite the divorce is important. Looking at extrafamilial relationships in divorce. Sometimes when one of the parents is gone from criminal issues or other legal issues, finding a strong adult who can take that place again, first providing for protection and safety with that child, with this person, a trusted person, someone who has the child's best interests at heart. Some traditional examples are an uncle who can take a son hunting, an aunt who can take the child shopping, or help a teenage girl with puberty and relationship problems as a mother or father surrogate. Looking at relationships with romantic partners and how we handle those things. Parents have a tendency to want to get back out in the social world and date, have caring, intimate relationships, looking to reconnect in a couplehood relationship. Nothing wrong with that, but sensitivity around the child's reaction to it. Understanding that seeing their parent date or have physical affection may be extremely painful, extremely uncomfortable to a child who's still adjusting, and being able to be the adult in the relationship. Repartnering, non-marital cohabitating relationships, particularly boyfriends, stepfathers, stepmothers, girlfriends who come and go, who have no real stability or security in the relationship, but a lot of changes for the child. The parent has to act as a gatekeeper. What is okay in my child's life and relationship, and separating their adult life from the child's life at home. With those kinds of relationships and the emergence of step parents and blended families, seeking counseling, trying to help those things become coordinated and part of the new family successfully is important. If you look over at page 584, I want to talk very briefly about the McMaster system. I don't want to just teach these particular systems because you have to research these and pick one, but I do want to go over them. McMaster's looks at dimensions of family functioning. Looking at page 585, it's problem solving, communication, roles. Whose roles are what? How do we do things? How do we get business done in our family? The affective responsive, what's on our face? How involved are we? What's our emotion? What are our thought processes? What are our behavior? What do we do to identify problems, to solve problems, to communicate our feelings, to understand and fill our roles? And what is normal? How do we vary from normal? What is clinically okay as a normal variation? What is problematic? What is symptomatic? How do we manage our emotions? Emotional and mood self-regulation. How to remain involved and invested in each other, and how do we modify our behaviors? The simple fix to this is that people have no control necessarily over a random thought that comes through their head or an emotion that they feel. You can feel any way you want to feel. You can think the things that you want to think. Where the boundaries can't be crossed is that you can't always say everything you want to say or do the things that you want to do. And helping families to understand the difference between a feeling or a thought and acting impulsively on those feelings and thoughts that then hurt them and others. It goes back to a danger to themselves, others, and the community then being both the family and the community at large, is a clinical focus for treatment. So I wish you well on this model, and we will get back together next week.